Another big game day has arrived. Duke takes on Arizona tonight in basketball. Second game of the season for the Blue Devils. What is Mark Mitchell's status? What is the vibe of this Duke team right now? We talk about that and a whole lot more on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. So glad to have you here with us on this Friday, November 10th, 2023. Game day is here. Duke basketball will take on Arizona a little bit later tonight from inside Cameron Indoor Stadium, expecting a really exciting game between these two teams. Locked On Blue Devils, of course, is your one-stop shop for all things Duke athletics. Got a big football game tomorrow, Duke and North Carolina from Chapel Hill. What'll happen in that game? Make sure you follow and watch that game, and we'll talk about it all next week here on Locked On Blue Devils. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Follow the YouTube page. Subscribe to our channel to watch the show each and every day. Let us know if you're an everydayer out there. Your support means so much. But it's basketball today, and it's our good pal, Brendan Marks of The Athletic. Long overdue. Glad to have him back here with us. And we were just talking, Brendan, this is truly the perfect time of year. We've got a premier non-conference home game that we're going to see a little bit later as Duke gets set to take on Arizona. Thanks for being here today, Brendan.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. No, I am very, very glad that this matchup is happening. And, hopefully it's an incentive for other coaches around the country to schedule some similarly interesting early season home series in the next couple of years.
Do you think that will be the case? I mean, we're always talking about conference realignment in the sport at large and what the NCAA tournament field looks like at the end of the year. Is this a sign of things to come? What is this truly as we see this matchup kind of tip off later tonight?
Yeah, that's actually something that myself and a couple other reporters were talking with John Shire about yesterday and asking, basically, is this a sign of things to come? How much of a rarity is this? And as much as I would love to see this become the norm, and there are a couple of good ones coming up. Obviously, this one, Duke and North Carolina and Kansas have renewed their series. That's going to start next season. So there are a couple, but not at the marquee level like we're seeing with this one. And next year, obviously, with North Carolina and Kansas. There are a couple of things working against it. One, when you look at the way a schedule breaks down, so in a case of Duke, you've already got 20 games allocated, 20 ACC games. That's more than half your schedule. So you've only got limited room there. Then you're also talking about, for Duke's purposes, you're going to have the ACC SEC Challenge. You're also going to have the Champions Classic every year. That's 2 more opportunities. Basically, it whittles you down to where you've only got like 6 non-conference games a year. And obviously, you want some of those to be against teams where you can work out some kinks, so to speak, and to say so in a respectful way to those other teams. It really doesn't leave you a lot of leeway. But John Shire did say he's committed to trying to make these, regular home series something that he incorporates into schedule moving forward. Sounds like Duke is currently working on potentially the next iteration of a home, but that would be starting in the 25-26 season. So again, it takes a couple of years out to plan them. But I do think sort of this is going to be the first great college basketball game of the season. I think that there are going to be more coaches who want to be a part of that. So I hope it's something we see more of moving forward.
Yeah, because we've really only seen it in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. This year you've got the SEC and ACC, their partnership getting started. Duke, of course, that trip to Fayetteville at the end of the month, which should be a really fun game between Duke and Arkansas. But yeah, anytime we get to see more of these, I think it's got to be good for the sport. I mean, you're talking about people that rarely get to see Arizona play inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. Next year, think about all the West Coast fans that might love that Duke program and have seen it for years and years and years, and they're going to get to see them play there at Arizona. So big for the sport and that sort of thing. So when we look at the game itself tonight, obviously a big one at hand between these two teams. Mark Mitchell is a player that has such a big impact on what Duke wants to do. Similar vibe to Tennessee a year ago, Brendan, where didn't really know that he wasn't going to be available for Duke in the NCAA tournament. I felt that way certainly on Monday in the season opener. Starting lineups are announced. Mark Mitchell's not. What's going on here? Wow, didn't see that one coming. So, kind of where are we at in his injury update?
Yeah, so luckily it's a sprained ankle. It's nothing more serious than that.
Right.
It's not something that hopefully is going to knock on wood, not something that's going to linger for a very long time. And actually talking to Kyle Filipowski and Tyrese Proctor, they said that they had an idea that he was kind of on the fence going in comparatively versus Tennessee. I think that caught just about everybody off guard. I remember being at that Tennessee game and the assistant coaches, walking by pregame, and I don't even know if they were entirely sure at that point that was not going to happen. So it sounds like it is going to be a game time decision, but from everything that John Shire said, he said, Mark practiced on Wednesday. Basically, whatever happened in practice yesterday was going to be the determiner. He's going to go through a workout pregame. I am expecting him to play. I'm expecting that he's going to be out there. I asked Tyrese Proctor and Kyle Filipowski, what is the biggest thing that you're going to be missing if Mark can't go? And Tyrese cut me off and said, Mark's going. So I tend to trust those guys. It sounds like they have a pretty good idea. And I'm sure after missing the game on Monday, he's chomping at the bit to get out there against Arizona.
Yeah, just a little indicator that our buddy Connor O'Neill pointed out to me earlier in the week on the show was simply that, hey, Mark didn't have a boot on. Like, we haven't really seen, it doesn't seem to be that severe of an ankle sprain, to your point as well. So a big game like this, I'm sure he wants to be out there playing.
Yeah. Am I expecting him to suddenly play 30 minutes? No. I think he's going to be eased back in for sure. And so even if he is able to go, and again, I'm expecting him to, there are going to be some different lineup combinations and different guys who are going to be relied upon probably more than was anticipated were Mark fully healthy.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Excited to see this game unfold a little bit later tonight. We'll talk about some of the key matchups, what to watch, and more after we take our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available for U.S. customers. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils alongside Brendan Marks, I'm JJ Jackson. So let's talk about it. This Duke team, we've seen them play one game. Same with Arizona. One game done for them. They won handedly. I think it was 1 point away from a school record in terms of margin of victory. What are kind of the big matchups? What are you looking at when you look at these two teams, Brendan?
Yeah, well, especially given Mark's status, I think you got to look at what Duke does in the front court to combat, I hope I'm not butchering his name, but Omar Ballo. I mean, he's one of the better big men in the country, and somebody who definitely has the size that, like, when you were looking at this Duke team coming into the season, these are the kind of guys that you were worried about, guys who were legitimate, conventional, back to the basket big men who had the size to give Kyle Filipowski problems. Obviously, Kyle has the length to where he can be competitive against guys, but going up against someone who has the bulk, I mean, I think Ballo's listed at like 7 feet, 260. Not that Kyle's small or lean by any means, but how Duke tries to defend him, Kyle, like, you can't afford for Kyle to get into foul trouble. So do you give Ryan Young time? Is Ryan Young going to be able to compete with him physically? Does Christian Reeves maybe even see some time? Christian Reeves played limited minutes last year, obviously, but for me, I keep thinking back to when Duke played Purdue early in the year last year. Christian Reeves actually was fairly decent against Zach Edey on the defensive side of things, not offensively, but just gave him the physicality that Edey doesn't really see from most teams. So I wouldn't be shocked if Christian Reeves got in there. That's one that I'm certainly watching for, how Duke sort of manages and mitigates the foul situation that I see presenting there. And then obviously in the backcourt, a familiar face is coming to town in Caleb Love, who's coming back to Cameron Indoor. He's going to be in a different role. But how Duke's perimeter matches up with him, Caleb Love is not the only guard there. Kylan Boswell's terrific. Jalen Bradley comes from Alabama. Like they have guys there in terms of depth. Like that's Duke's biggest advantage this season is they have backcourt depth. Arizona has the same. So those are the two that I'm really watching for and that I'm kind of interested to see how they play out.
What did you see on the defensive end of the floor from the Duke backcourt in that opener earlier in the week? And kind of what are you expecting to see out of those guards led by Proctor and Roach?
Yeah, well, I think it'll be interesting to see how Tyrese Proctor is used defensively, because to me, he is Duke's best perimeter defender, in the backcourt. Talking about real perimeter guys like Mark Mitchell, I think is Duke's best overall defender. I think he does, reasonably he could guard 1 through 5. But in terms of backcourt perimeter defenders, I think Tyrese is clearly their best point of attack defender. He's got the length to make things difficult for people, not the most athletic guy. But like, I think he is probably someone who's going to see a lot of Caleb. Like, I think that's going to be a matchup I'm expecting to see a lot of, just because Caleb does have the size. And so Caleb's, 6'3", 6'4". So I think Tyrese is obviously someone who made tremendous defensive strides the back half of last year. I still think that on the whole, Duke's defensive communication is a work in progress. It definitely was in their exhibition, especially early on against Dartmouth. They went on that dominant run towards the end of the first half. Second half, obviously, things were not competitive. But I'm looking to see how the communication works. And especially, with Tyrese, with some of those different guards, Jared McCain has got to be a little more careful than he was in the first game. Can't foul out. John Shire said Jared told him that he'd never fouled out in a game before. And John was like, "You sure about that?" But so those guys are going to have their hands full. Arizona, Duke has some of the best guards in the country, but Arizona's right there in that conversation too.
Excited to see this in the backcourt particular, because Arizona's certainly got some players. Caleb Love coming back, and the memories I'm sure that he has playing inside Cameron Indoor, the Duke team, the guards in particular, having played him last season. That's just going to be really fun to see all of this unfold. And we've gone quite a bit of time, Brendan, without even talking about Kyle Filipowski and the dominant debut that he had to his sophomore season. We mentioned Balu on the offensive and defensive end of the floor for Arizona. What about Flip? He's certainly going to play a role in this matchup.
He sure is. And so that's the balance for John Shire, is like on offense. And I think we saw probably less of this than we would have had Mark been able to go. That's the difference with Mark versus Ryan Young. When Mark is in the game, Duke conceivably can, and I would argue should, play a significant amount of 5-out offense. They can do some of that with Ryan Young. They did some of that with Ryan Young last year, used him as a screener, used him in DHO, situations, let him roll. That's where he's strongest. But when you have Mark Mitchell out there with Filipowski at the 5, you're going to drag Ballo out. You're going to. Because if he doesn't, then at that point, you're talking about a situation where you're going to have a perimeter mismatch. So it's what can Duke do there to drag him out of the lane. I think Kyle, that's one of the things, not just in this game, but for the rest of the season, it's looking to see, okay, how can you use Kyle to pull some of those big men out of the paint, both so that you can create those backdoor cutting lanes for some of your guards, for some of your other perimeter players, but also so that Kyle gets some of those mismatches. There's not a lot of bigs in the country who are going to be able to defend him out on the wing like that. So certainly it's going to be a fine line, though, because while you want him to be able to do that on the offensive end, defensively, he is going to be asked to be on the inside. And so how aggressive can he be without drawing some of those offensive fouls? Because defensively, he's already going to be put in compromising situations. So it's a careful line. But obviously, like, he was terrific in the first game. He's going to be terrific all year. The fact that, something he did say this week that I thought was interesting was he called his recovery graceful this week. He said, "I was recovering gracefully." And I think that, we talk so much about the hip procedure he had this offseason. We couldn't know what a real game was going to do to him in that sense. It seems like, again, early returns, one game, not necessarily exerting himself to the level he's going to on Friday or today. Like, I'm interested to see how the hips continue to pay dividends for him moving forward.
Yeah, I really hadn't even thought about the recovery element to it, but that is such a good point. You want to be able to turn over game after game after game and still feel like your better self. More so when you talk about two hip flip, new hip flip, all the fun things that are out there in regards to him. I was talking, hey, last year, this guy had 19 dunks the entire season, already had 4 in the first, just the simple act of being a little more explosive. We saw that baseline drive and countdown where he kind of hammered it home towards the end of it. Playing above the rim, I think, will be something you see a little bit more of from Filipowski this season.
Yeah, for sure. And like, let's not forget, like he was brought in last year to be a power forward, right? Like you knew Derek Lively was there. He's a 7-foot power forward, which is crazy. But that's the role he was asked to fill. Now that he's going to be getting more opportunities and more minutes at the 5, I certainly think in combination with the hips, it's going to give him a lot more opportunities to play above the rim, going to give him a lot more pick and roll opportunities. We still haven't probably seen the best of him as a pick and roll roller yet. So that's another thing to be watching for. And listen, we can talk about him in a vacuum independently too. The fact that he has Tyrese Proctor, who I think is one of the best pick and roll guards in the country, feeding him the ball in those looks.
Some of the passes we saw even in the first game.
Him being able to hit some of those, behind the back, no look passes where flips a foot from the basket. Like that is the thing that Duke can do that there's not a lot of teams in the country who can match that.
Let's keep talking about the Duke basketball team. Big game tonight against Arizona, but even beyond that, the schedule pretty fun the way it sets up over the next few weeks, and we'll discuss that more with Brendan Marks after we take our final timeout here on today's show. Jace Medical is another proud presenting sponsor here of Locked On Blue Devils, and you and I spend a lot of time talking together. We're fired up about wins and losses, who starts and who sits, and I'm very thankful for the connection that we have. But today, I want our chat to be a little bit more personal. Whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you're covered, my friend. Thanks to our partners at Jace Medical. Their life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Even ED generics like Viagra and others are available prescriptions that you can find. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am very thankful for the service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with the year supply. I also ordered the antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone, end quote. If you or someone you love needs some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily medication, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Also, remember to use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. Again, promo code LOCKEDON at jacemedical.com for $20 off your purchase. Jace Medical is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, let's wrap things up here today on the podcast alongside Brendan Marks. I'm JJ Jackson. The Athletic is where you need to be. Tell us about some of the stories, profiles you've done recently. You could find stories, I'm sure, about the games to come, but also able to go back and see some of the summer work that you put in covering the Duke basketball program, Brendan. Kind of plug some of the work you've done recently.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity. All my stuff goes up at theathletic.com. If you haven't checked this out, highly recommend doing so. You get my stuff on Duke. You also get the rest of our college basketball team. You get MLB, NFL, NHL, NBA. You get every major sport in the world. So I'm biased, but I think we have the best sports writing staff in the whole world. And then in terms of Duke coverage coming down the pipe, I've actually already filed 2 Duke stories that I've been working on for a little while. One of those I think is supposed to go here in the next week or so, probably another one around Thanksgiving. But, the summer gives me the opportunity to dig into things that we don't really have the time for during the season. So I'm excited for some of those to finally see the light of day. And like I said, hopefully should be in the next week or 2.
All right, so Arizona tonight. Tuesday, Duke takes on Michigan State in the Champions Classic. They're in Chicago as we'll roll the schedule coming up for Duke across the bottom of the screen for those watching us here on YouTube. I mean, where are we at with this Duke team early in the year? A couple of big tests before you see ACC play really kick up and going once we turn into the new year.
Yeah, for sure. These two, it's so funny because last year you had PK85 and you knew that Duke was going to get a little bit of a warm up before it got to the opportunity. Obviously played Kansas early on, but knew there was going to be a little bit of a warm up. And it's the opposite this year where these are the marquee, non-conference games. Then there's going to be some more stuff at home. Duke's got an MTV event that they're hosting this year. But then there's the Arkansas game and then boom, like that's it. You got Baylor in December, but it's not nearly as much of a buildup. It's right now and then it's again. So, I think we're going to learn a lot about Duke in this next week or so. I really do. I think the Arizona game, especially the fact that it's at home, the fact that it may be, Mark Mitchell, even if he does play, like I said, I'm not expecting that he's going to play 35 minutes or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how Duke and how John Shire handle actually having expectations thrust upon them. For most of last year, up until the end of the season when they were on that 10-game run, this was a Duke team that I think was largely forgotten about. John was the storyline, and the actual team itself, maybe not so much. Got absolutely clobbered by Purdue, obviously lost to Kansas, didn't necessarily have that, start of season that I think a lot of Duke fans are accustomed to seeing. So how do you handle that? John Shire still has never lost in Cameron Indoor Stadium. Does that change tonight? I think it's a real opportunity for us to learn, probably tonight more so than the Michigan State game, just what this team is made of. And if they get through both of these games with victories, then I think you're talking about validation that, yes, this is a national title team. Not saying that if they lose either of these games or both of these games that they're not, but that I think would really cement them as a season-long front runner and sort of validate the fact that, listen, these guys know there's a target on their back, and it didn't really matter. They were able to get the wins anyways.
Talking about the guys we don't necessarily know just yet, those freshmen in particular, these premier games are when you really get to, all right, the lights are shining way brighter than they did for a game against Dartmouth or, later down a school like Hofstra or Queens, who's going to be on the Duke schedule. These are the moments that you're certainly looking for. Jared McCain, we mentioned his performance a little bit ago. Caleb Foster, 15 points off the bench in his debut. I mean, talk about the guards and those young freshmen, if you will, Brendan, kind of the opportunity for them to really shine. We know that we're around this program a lot, but the basketball world will certainly get to know some of these Duke players more so.
Yeah, for sure. And there's opportunity there, Jared McCain obviously started, probably, had some foul trouble, probably didn't have the game that he wanted to have in the opener. And Caleb Foster took advantage. That's the benefit of having five-star guards coming off the bench. And, I think Sean Stewart's a guy we haven't mentioned yet. Crazy athlete, one of the better athletes on the team. If Mark Mitchell can't go, is there more of an opportunity for him than there might have been? I think so. So, TJ Power obviously brings a 3-point shooting threat. Where does he sort of fit into the rotation altogether? So there are opportunities here. The other thing, though, I will say, just to, not to be a downer, but you've also got to be cautious about not overreacting to some freshman performances here. And the guy who I come back to is Trevor Keels. Trevor Keels plays against Kentucky a couple of years ago, had 23, 28 points, looked like, he was going to be one of the breakout stars of the season. And in hindsight, that was the high water mark of his entire Duke career, was that game. It was kind of a steady decline from there, unfortunately, with a couple of, high points mixed in. So you want to make sure that while we are going to learn something about these guys, we have to take it in some context. And I think that that's going to be the important thing to suss out too. But no, I'm very excited to see how, especially Jared and Caleb look against Arizona's guards, because that's a way to mature you and season you in college basketball real fast.
All right, so as we wrap up and we look at the state of the program, we've seen the signing day portion come and go. We've seen 4 players turn their letter of intents already, and Isaiah Evans has announced kind of a signing day ceremony at his school come Monday. So all 5 in the books. Cooper Flagg has officially told the world and put it pen to paper that he will be a Duke Blue Devil. Our program's loyalists, the everydayers out there with Locked On Blue Devils, can recall earlier this summer, after you were seeing Cooper Flagg play in Peach Jam, you were planting your flag on the type of player that he could be at the next level, Brendan. Duke now knows he's going to be wearing those 4 letters across the chest. What does that mean for the program?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, he's the best player in my opinion. He's the best player in high school basketball. I think right now he's more impactful than Cam Boozer. AJ DeBonsa is the other guy that I'd put in that conversation, who is probably a better 3-level scorer than Cooper right now. But for as good as Derek Lively was defensively, for as much of a unicorn as he was, so is Cooper. I mean, he is a true defensive unicorn. So much has been made about his scoring and his rebounding. The block shots to me are crazy. And what's so crazy about them is not just that he's getting these blocks. It's not that he's sitting back. It's not that he's doing it as a help defender. It's not that it's floaters that he's, coming up. He is blocking shots from behind the 3-point line all the way to the rim as a primary defender. And his timing is exceptional. He's going to be a star. And if you look at the rest of John Shire's class, it's hard. They were constructed with Cooper Flagg in mind.
Yeah.
It was you are going to come here and you're going to be a shooter and you're going to be playing off of this guy. And so for him to finally make it official, to solidify that he's going to be there, again, national letters of intent are one thing. They don't mean as much as they used to. You can still ask out of those, as Duke saw this offseason. That is a situation that I don't think Duke is fully passed with this class yet. I would just say, I think that's something to be aware of. But yeah, to already have so many guys in the fold who fit so well around Cooper, to still VJ Edgecombe still in the picture. I would expect some news on him to come out at some point here, but it's a situation where Duke is going to be losing this one core, and John Shire's proven all right, we're not dropping off. Even though he's only going to have Cooper for 9 months, flag immediately makes them contenders again. He's a special player, one of the best players I've ever seen for somebody his age. It's wild.
Yeah, they're called Cameron Crazies for a reason. There's no slowing down. It's pure passion and joy. It's always looking ahead to what's to come. They run 1,000,000 miles an hour, and yet somehow, some way, John Shire seems to run a little bit quicker than this fan base. And I say that to say, Brendan, great, these letter of intents have come in. Now, all of a sudden, the Boozer twins are on hand this weekend for an official visit, looking at tonight's game with Duke and Arizona. The guy just doesn't slow down. It's okay, what's the next kind of premier player that we can host and hopefully ultimately end up with a commitment?
Yeah, I mean, I think, he has shown now a strategy of doing this, of getting ahead, and that enables him to get ahead in the next class. With 24 basically locked, with 24 basically locked up, he gets to start on 25 earlier than people who are going to be recruiting 24s all the way up to April or whatever. He's got that benefit of doing that by locking this up early, and he's now done this 2-3 years in a row. So it's become a cycle where that has led to success and continues to yield success. So yeah, and the Boozers, I mean, I say that Cooper's a better player than Cam. That's splitting hairs. That's like saying which Ferrari is faster. They're both ridiculous, but Cam is more of a physical freak of nature for his age, for his size right now. And again, he's incredibly well-rounded. I would argue, you could make the argument that he's more well-rounded than Cooper is. Maybe doesn't have the upside in terms of the athleticism and some of the just freaky natural instincts, but foundationally, he is so good as a scorer, so good as a passer, so good as a rebounder, really good timing as a shot blocker. So again, is this a situation where you're talking about Duke potentially having the number one player in back-to-back classes? Yeah, that's absolutely on the board. And, it doesn't seem like that's a trajectory that John Shire is going to be falling from anytime soon.
Well, we're certainly going to be following your work all throughout. Good coverage coming. Basketball season is back. We'll be able to increase kind of our visits here on the program itself, and that's something that I'm certainly excited about. Thank you for taking time to join us on the podcast here today, Brendan. Have a little bit of fun, but not too much fun, because I know the Cameron Crazies are going to be breathing down your neck a little bit later tonight, man.
Breathing, sweating, getting paint chipped on me. I missed it. it.
You're back, man. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, JJ. Appreciate it.
All right. That's Brendan Marks of The Athletic joining us here on the show. Follow his work. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll be able to recap it coming up on Monday. That'll do it for today's show. Thanks so much for your support. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you on Monday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.